say, kind of give us insight to what the problems are. Then we can use our skill set to also help them come together. They witness and, can read the mind and work stuff out. And, our witness.
Okay, see our heads.
So they're close. Me just, I'm just gonna put my this on the tripod so I can stop shaking. So just a second. So can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, I guess we can begin.
All right.
To enjoy all your knowledge and experience and your advice and tips on relocating back to Ghana.
Thank you so much for having us. Huge shout out to you all for having us here.
Just to make sure it's very clear. I mean, if you can let us know if it's clear. If it's clear, you can give a thumbs up. If it's clear, if you can hear us clearly, just give us a thumbs up. Few people should give us a thumbs up so we know you can hear us clearly. If you can hear us clearly, give us a thumbs up. Okay, nobody has given yet, so we need to be sure you can actually hear us. What's going on?
Okay, someone has given us
I
a
see one
thumbs
thumbs up. Excellent.
Awesome.
All right, beautiful.
We're ready to
beautiful.
go.
All right.
So hi everybody, we are Certified Africa. My name is Kristen Tellis-Quay.
And I am Ni Amakwe.
And Certified Africa is a travel and lifestyle company that is focused on connecting the African diaspora to the continent for business, networking, relocating, and all things Africa.
All right, so just to put us in the right context so we understand how qualified, if you like, we are to address this subject of relocating back to Africa. So I'm a Ghanaian, born in Ghana, grew up in Ghana, lived in Ghana over 20 years, worked in Ghana and did all things Ghana, business and everything. And I've also moved to the US and I've lived in the US for some time and I've experienced what it feels like to live in America. And of course, I've now gone back and run back and forth between Ghana and here. Now, my wife, on the other hand, has lived in America her entire life and also the Caribbean. Now, she's also been to Ghana, lived in Ghana, and now we're married and the two of us now go between. We live in Ghana and then in America because of the business that we do with Certified Africa, which helps serve as a bridge between the diaspora and then, of course, the African continent. So that's a little background about us in terms of our qualification today to talk about this subject, which I believe is very crucial and important for people who really, really need it or believe in that, idea of Africans in the diaspora making their way back to the continent, one way or the other. I mean, I always tell people it's not about always going to live there forever, but at least having a base or a home there and having businesses and all of that to help the continent develop in that respect and also help yourself as well. So we'll go into how you can make the approach that people can take for them to plan that big move if you're that person who have that kind of thought. Now, I like to put out there, first of all, that this is not for everybody. It's very crucial that everybody gets that. This is not for everybody, okay? Now, this is about, in terms of the move, it's about you and your personal life decision. Because you hear a lot of people making all kinds of comments and points about the idea of people moving. I think it's a personal decision that people must take. And we must try not to be distractions to other people and not allow other people distract us from what we've decided to do, either to move to Africa, do business, or whatever it is that concerns Africa. So I like to give that caveat before we zoom right into it.
Yes. So the approach that the diaspora should take when they're thinking about making this big move to Ghana, number one, the first thing that we always like to tell people is to be patient with the process. It's so key to, really think things through, to make sure that you're planning so that you're not making mistakes. It's key that you just kind of take a deep breath, slow down, think about it, and take it step by step.
Now, a lot of things happen when people decide one day that they want to move and they just pick their bags and then make the move. They end up making a lot of mistakes. And you'll find out that a lot of people also go, and then in 1 year, in 6 months, some people 3 months, they actually come back to where they decided to move away from. So it's very crucial that you have patience, because this is a life decision that you're about to take. It's not something that you should take kindly or lightly. Okay, a lot of people have tried it before and maybe it went well for them, but you don't want to bet your life on a gamble where you're not too sure. So you have to take your time to go through a planning process. And that's the first step in terms of approach to anybody who wants to make that big move to the African continent, specifically Ghana. Now we'll deal with Ghana, but then a lot of the things applies to several other African countries as well. Now, the second thing that we would like to touch on when it comes to planning your big move, or the approach that people should have when it comes to making that big move or taking that leap of faith, has to do with visiting. Mm-hmm. It is very key. But what do you think about visiting?
Yeah, visiting is key. You want to be able to see the place. You want to know, what neighborhood do I want to live in? All of those things are key. You want to get a feel of the people that you'll be interacting with. And it's very hard to do that and to know all of these things if you've never taken a visit. It's very hard to say that I want to move somewhere where I don't know the temperature of that place. I don't know the culture of that place. I don't know anyone there. So we always recommend at least taking one visit. If you can afford it, go 2 times, go 3 times. And it can be a lot easier for you if you're planning over those multiple trips and visits that you'll be taking to the country.
I've met some very radical people who will tell you, for me, I'm just tired of being here and I just want to go. One time I just want to go, and I tell them, well, you may want to go, but I've seen other people too who have gone. But the reality is that once they get it, they realize, oh, this is not what I expected. It's not my kind of place, because Africa is a big place. It's not just Ghana. So once you pay a visit, it helps you to be more informed in terms of where I really want to be, whether or not I want to be in Ghana, I want to be in Sierra Leone, I want to be in Gambia, or wherever you decide to choose. But you have to first take the step and visit. And the reason we advise people who want to make the big move in their preparation towards making that journey is because traveling 2 or 3 times is because in your process of being there, you're able to initiate some things before you actually make that move. Okay, you're able to build solid relationships, because of course I'll talk about the fact that Africa thrives on relationships. So you're able to make some things, you're able to put some measures in place, before you even take that big move. And that's what we encourage people in the planning phase, for you to take at least 2 or 3 visits. That is very, very key. And that's a solid approach that you have to consider when you're intending to move. And that brings us to the third thing that you have to, the third approach that we believe people must have, or attitude that people must have when it comes to making that big move from the diaspora, is getting help. Getting help. Now, at this point, we cannot overemphasize getting help. A lot of us think that we can always do things on our own. I can just get up today and just go. I want to move to Africa, and I get up, I just move and go like that. Yes, you can do that. A lot of people have done that. But you see, there's a saying that success leaves clues. Something that a journey that somebody has traveled before, they are able to give you directions and tell you that, hey, if it pass here, it's going to be well with you. If it pass there, it could be a disaster. So you want to be able to get help. That is a key in the planning process or decision-making process that you don't have to overlook, getting help. And sometimes we have to be willing to pay for that help, because when you try to say, oh, because I have to make a sacrifice to get somebody to help me, I'm going to do it on my own, that could be a disaster. And here's the thing. A lot of people that have failed in this journey, they do not come out to say that, hey, I tried moving to Ghana and I failed. Or I tried doing this and I failed. They don't normally tell us. There's a few people that succeed that are bold enough to come and tell us that, hey, I tried this, and of course it failed once, but then I succeeded. So it's hard for us to know what really goes into it. So we suggest that no matter how experienced you are, how much research you have done, how many websites, even after this webinar, it should not give you the final conclusion to say that I'm taking my bags and I'm moving to Africa. We believe you should get help. Even if you've not visited, get help. Let somebody walk you through the process so you don't make the same mistakes that other people have made before. So that step is a very huge approach that diasporans must take when they are planning their big move to the motherland. Very, 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 very key. Now, let's move into what we call Certified Africa's 5 Golden Steps to Relocating. I hope you have your pens and notepads to take some notes. Now in our 5 golden rules, we've broken down a number of things that throughout your planning process and then also your execution process, you need these things. You need these things to make sure that I'm on course, that I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm about to embark on. I have everything figured out. I have these things sorted out. So therefore, I can be more confident to be able to to make that jump. And we actually this is some of the things that we talk about in our course. We have a course at Certified Africa that helps people who want to relocate and move. So that's some of the things that we teach you, we take you through, and we provide you resources as well that complements these things that we're about to dive into. So the first piece in our 5-step process to relocating, I hope you have your pens down, is what we call the foundation. The foundation. And you want to talk about the foundation piece?
Yeah, the foundation is very key. We don't like to go to the next step because every house that you're building has a foundation. It goes into defining your move, setting your goals, defining your legacy. What is the move about? You don't just get up and move to Ghana just because you think it might be cool. There's usually a bigger purpose, something that's calling you to the continent. So you want to think about it in terms of, what will my legacy be when I move? Is it something that I want to build? Do I want to build generational wealth? Am I going because I want to own land and I want my kids or my future generations to be connected to Africa? You must always have a foundation and a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing, because things won't always be easy. But when you have something in mind of purpose and you've already set that in place, when those things happen that deter you from your course, you'll always have a reason and a purpose to go back. And you'll say, okay, this is bigger than me. This is about legacy. This is about the goals that I want to accomplish. And, in the foundation piece, it's also clear to define your goals. What is it that I'm going to accomplish? Because we're not just going to go and, run around without a plan in place. So when you have your goals, I'm going there to execute X, Y, Z in the first 6 months. And then the next 6 months, I'm doing this and such and so forth. And so all of that, these are things that, you must do when you're setting your foundation.
So, there's a man called Simon Sinek who said something that you must always start with your why. And a lot of people take these things for granted. They feel like once I've decided that I want to move and that's it. That's it. I just want to move. But you have to go deep to figure out what's the why you're making this move to Ghana, like you talked about. And that's the foundation piece that will make sure that you come up with it. And if you're doing that on your own and not getting help, you have to make sure that you're clearly defining that. You're defining the goals. And in fact, it helps you to even go further to find out how can I be able to sustain myself throughout this period. Okay, because if I look at a type of life, and here's another thing I realized, that a lot of people who think of moving back to Africa, sometimes we are tempted to think that because I'm going back to Africa, I'm going to just reduce my lifestyle in terms of my ambition and what I want to accomplish. I can just deal with it because I'm tired of where I am. I met a gentleman in Miami some time back, and what he told me was, he said, look, man, I'm just tired of being in America, and I just want to go to Africa. Now he just felt he's just tired and he wants to go to Africa. So what he didn't care was how he was going to live, the type of life he wants to live. If he doesn't have the same type of business or anything, provided he can survive, he's okay. So a lot of people tend to reduce the kind of person that they want to be overall in life just because they're moving to Africa and they're tired of where they are. But it doesn't have to be the case. You need to clearly define what exactly the type of life you want to live when you are there. And that helps with your planning. That's a foundation piece that you have to focus on and deal with carefully. Your dream, what kind of dream do you want to live? Once you're in Ghana, you're in Senegal, wherever you choose to go. It's very key to clearly define that in the preparation stage. And that also comes with the mental piece, the spiritual piece, and the emotional piece. In the foundation piece, you want to make sure all these things are checked. You're spiritually sound, fit to make it to Africa, so you're not frustrated. You're mentally fit, you're emotionally set, ready to go. So that once you have everything else figured out, you don't have your walls are not shaking. So that is very key that you focus on the foundation piece and the 5 golden steps to relocating. Now, the second piece to the 5 golden steps is what we call the essentials. The essentials. Talk about the essentials.
Yeah, so the essentials are your paperwork, all the documentation, all of the key things that you're going to need for this move. You know, your passport and your visa and the paperwork that all comes along with that, your residence permit, you know, your work permit, all of these different forms that you will need to fill out. If you're thinking about starting a business, you know, you'll have business requirements. If you're thinking about working, which we'll talk about later, you may need to apply for a work permit. You know, there's cost involved with that. So these are some of the things that you'll be thinking about when you're thinking about the essentials.
Very, 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 very key. If you have any intentions of moving to Ghana, just like any other place, there's always a lot of paperwork and documentations involved. And I think we'll touch on this eventually as we move on. But this is a second piece which is very key, the essentials. You know, having all these documentations checked and making sure that these things are intact, because these are the things you're going to need. If you're somebody who, again, I know, let me give you an example. There are people who have this strategy where they say, okay, I don't want to necessarily get residence permit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I get a long visa. So some people get 5 years visa. So what they do is that once there is multiple entry, when they get to Ghana, when the 3 months that they can stay within the country is about to expire, they move to Togo, they just cross the border and they come back. That's somebody's strategy that they want to use to live. So of course, they don't care about residence permit and all of that. But you have to sit down to make sure that all these things are in check. How do you want to go about yours? You want to be that type of person who want to enter Togo and come back and have another 3 months and be rotating in that respect? Or you just want to go ahead and do the resident permits with whichever institution you have to do that, like immigration, and get it sorted out. Okay, so these are things, again, that we help people with in terms of the details, the nitty-gritties of what goes into it. But if you're doing this on your own, you have to make sure your paperwork checks out. And we'll talk about that, I think, some more.
Driver's license, bank accounts, all of the day-to-day things that, of course, we take for granted here. You will now need to make sure that you register for all of these things when you relocate as well.
All right. So the next thing that you want to look at in the 5 golden process, the third thing that you want to look at, I hope you're noting them down. Now we'll dive into some of these things more down there. Okay. Now it's what we call the daily bread. The daily bread, and this has to do with everyday necessities and living in Ghana. That's what we call the daily bread. Now this, you want to touch on it briefly?
Yeah. So I mean, your daily bread, you want to think about where you're going to live. What type of neighborhood do I want to be in? Do I want it to be more rural? Do I want it to be, you know, more closer to the city? What do I want it to be like? Do I want there to be a lot of food places? And all of these things, you know, if you're moving to a new place and you have no idea what the different neighborhoods are like in Ghana, you're going to need to think this through. You're going to need to have a plan of, okay, I think I like this neighborhood better than this because this is the type of people that are going to be here, or this is the type of lifestyle that I'll have if I'm there. You know, you always also want to think about whether or not you want to start a business. You know, what will I start a business that will bring in residual income while I, you know, may work a remote job back home? Or while I may have a job in Ghana, you know, these are all things that you may want to consider. And that's one of the things that we help people do is come up with ways or business opportunities that can help them bring in cash and income flow that can help sustain them as they're building whatever it is that they want to build when they're relocating.
So it's all about survival, just like any other place. It's about survival.
And thriving.
How, of course, not just surviving, but thriving, of course. How can I survive and thrive in the new environment that I'm about to move into? And this is the daily bread. Somebody must eat. Somebody must live somewhere. Somebody must move from one place to another. Somebody must have shelter on their head. Somebody must have electricity coming in. How do I get a chance to survive once I get to this place that I'm intending to move to? So that is something key that you want to look at in your journey. And there are a lot of different things. All these things we're talking about, there are a lot of things under these things that you have to really go deep into. You don't just conclude once you hear neighborhood and then that's it. You want to go into it. You want to go into detail. You know, get somebody who is experienced in terms of knows the neighborhoods. Because of course we can't sit here and tell you about all the neighborhoods in Ghana that it's safer in East Legon and, you know, Bachona is not the best, and we can't do that. But what you need to understand is that you need to figure out what type of neighborhood you want to live, the necessities of living in Ghana. You know, how do I go about it? How do I survive and thrive? So that's the third leg to the 5 golden rules of relocating that you have to take into consideration. And I think we'll touch on this one as well a little bit more as we move on. Now, the next thing that you want to look at in this process has to do with the transition. We call it a transition. The transition. Now, this has to do with establishing yourself in Ghana's society and culture. Okay, now you're going to a new place. You're new. Like when my wife first came to Ghana, one of the few things that I was so proud of her was that she realized that she's in a new environment. So in one of the ways that she thought was best to fit in a little bit was to learn a local language. So I got her a teacher, a tree teacher, the most widely spoken language for her to start training. So what I'm trying to say is that once you're transitioning, you want to begin to think about things that can come up in the transition process and you being able to establish yourself in Ghanaian culture. What kind of communities can you be part of? Touch on this briefly and the other
it's so
culture.
important. So you have to understand that, of course, Ghana is going to be different than wherever you're coming from, whether that's the UK or the US. You can't expect it to operate the same way. While some things will be similar, a lot of things will be different. So I think one of the first key things that I always, tell people is that leave your expectations or your previous things that you've experienced wherever you're coming from, leave it back behind and understand that you're moving somewhere different, and understand that Ghana is also developing. Ghana just works different. And so, there'll be things like, okay, we're used to, in the US, a lot of times we're used to things being fast. We go to a place and we're used to having our food in 10 minutes. That it doesn't work that way. Usually in Ghanaian culture, you go and you sit down and for a meal and it may take an hour and a half. These are things that you have to be open to when you're moving to a new place.
Exactly. And that's what we call the transition. The transition. That's the fourth step that we like to talk about with people who want to make this move, the transition, establishing yourself in Ghanaian society and culture. And the same applies to any other African country that you want to move into. And in fact, any other country that you intend to live in is very key. Now, the last leg, before we go into some details in terms of some of the legs, has to do with doing business, the business piece, doing business in Ghana. We always tell people that, you don't want to move to Africa and try to get a job. There's no offense to that. But there are thousands of people already who want to get jobs in Ghana, not even getting one. So when you're coming from a place where you have some disposable income, with a little planning, you'll be able to come in differently, from a business standpoint. You don't have to be a business savvy person really to get into that. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that as we move on. So the fifth leg that we always talk about in our course and teach people has to do with the doing business in Ghana piece, because we believe we're very entrepreneurial. We do a lot of different things in Ghana and also here. Okay, and we believe that, look, business is key when it comes to Africa. For anybody coming from the diaspora, whether you're a business, you call yourself an entrepreneur or not, you have to consider business as a way out. Because I'm telling you, a lot of people that I've spoken to that have not survived the move. Most of those people are people who came in and wanted to get jobs. Some of them got jobs, but it didn't go well. So there's so many different reasons. But I think sometimes the business piece gives you a better cushion when it comes to moving to Ghana or to Africa. Now let's get into some of the legs that we talked about in these 5 golden steps that we dealt with. We'll talk about some key things, some key areas that we believe stands out for people who are planning a move to Ghana. And the first one I want to deal with has to do with accommodation. Okay, the accommodation piece. Now, it has to do with renting, buying, and building a house, things like that, things to consider, some do's and don'ts. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to accommodation in Ghana, for anybody who wants to move, there are 2 things. Is either you want to rent or you want to have your own place. It's very, very, very simple. There's no 2 ways about it. It's either you want to rent or you want to have your own place. Now, talking about the rent piece, you want to talk about rent?
Yeah. So with the rent piece, usually, oftentimes, this is a different cultural thing. A lot of times you'll have to pay for your place that you're staying a year to 2 years in advance. It's just the way things work. So I often recommend people while you're deciding whether or not you want to rent, or if you want to build a home or own a home or purchase a home that's already built, you may want to actually rent for 6 months and find out, okay, this is where I may want to move, or, this is what I think I want to do. But you want to keep in mind that the system for renting is very different from other places.
And this is why we advise that with renting, there are 2 ways that I look at it. One, it's either you want to rent in the beginning for some time to be able to survey Ghana. If you've never been to Ghana really, or the country you're trying to move to, you want to use that few time to survey and be sure which neighborhoods you want to live in. So because of that, I'm planning in my planning process to rent for 6 months, to rent for if you like 3 months, Airbnb or whichever one you want to use. And then use that opportunity to test the neighborhoods out. If you're somebody, and that's why in the beginning, we talk about visiting 2 or 3 times. That also helps you because you have an intention of moving to be able to test different neighborhoods out and say, this is a place I really want to live. This is a place I would love to, it was comfortable when I lived there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks on my vacation. So these are things that you want to do in advance so that when it comes to whether or not you want to rent, you can make a more informed decision that I only want to rent for 6 months or I don't want to rent at all. Because what it takes to do all these constant rents, I can take my time and plan. If it takes me 2 years to be able to make the final move, except somebody has a gun to your head and wherever you're coming from and you have to urgently get to wherever you're intending to go in Ghana, I usually suggest and recommend that half-time, if based on your financial resources, if it will take you 1 year, do that. If based on your financial standing, it will take you 2 years, do that so that you don't have to come and get yourself in a rent cycle, because that's one of the things that eats up people's monies and they want to run back to wherever they're coming from. Okay, and when you're faced with having to pay 2 years and 1 year always in advance, you can't take that anymore. So most people give up. Okay, so the rent piece and accommodation piece, you want to check that out. Okay, you can get some decent accommodation in terms of rent, based on where. And we give some resources as well in our program for relocating, some very deep resources that you can connect with. But you need to understand that if you want to rent, you're paying 1 year to 2 years of rent if you're intending to move. Now, the second piece has to do with building your own space, having your own land, and building your own thing. Now, the first thing I'll touch on has to do with the land piece. Okay. Now, I just want you to understand, if you're watching now from America, from UK, from Germany, wherever it is, from the Caribbean, now Ghana is actually giving away some free land. So that's one of the ways you want to look at it. They're giving some free lands in the Cape Coast area. So you want to do your research. If you want to talk to us about that, you can also come through our program. We'll talk about all of those things. But there are some free lands if you want to build. That's one avenue you can look at. And also if you want to buy land to be able to build for yourself, you want to look at, again, the place you want to build. And that's why I always say getting help is very crucial. Because when you get help, that will be able to give you an informed decision that I have to buy my land in this place. And one of the things about buying land has to do with certain key things that you need to consider when it comes to nearness to what do you call it? Nearness to a school, or nearness to maybe a place like a hospital.
Or airport,
so a lot of people consider all of those things when they talk about where they want to build. But we always advise people that you want to take your time and build something. It shouldn't have to be something fancy. If you're someone who is very glamorous and you don't have the money yet, we're saying set up something. If it's one single room, self-contained, that you can buy one plot of land or even a half plot of land and build that. While you work your way up, we advise that you do that. Because I'm telling you, all the money you'll be given to renters, to landlords, that money could actually go into building a business or expanding your business whilst you're there, or even getting a bigger place eventually when you're there. So we advise people that if you're intending to buy land, consider the places you're buying the land at, and don't think about something extravagant. Start from somewhere. We have, if you reach out to us again, we can give you resources in terms of credible sources. You can actually buy land. We can sit here and narrate all of that in terms of who you can go to. But again, you need to consider that when it comes to accommodation. It's either you're getting a free land in Cape Coast like in Ghana, or you're thinking of buying your own land, and where you decide to buy the land. Whether you're an urban person or you're a rural person, you don't mind living in a place which is a little far from the capital city. If you don't mind, there's more affordability when it comes to that. If you're somebody who want to live in the city, the heart of the city, it's going to be expensive. So you need to have your belts tightened up based on what you want to do. So it depends on your lifestyle and how you want to live. That will determine where you get your accommodation from. So the next thing that we'll touch on has to do with the documents piece. Passport, visas, and legal requirements that people need to be able to make this big move when it comes to Ghana. So to take us through, the 3 things that people need right from here before they even visit one of those things.
So number 1, if you don't have your passport yet, you will definitely want to obtain a passport. a lot of people think that, and also your visa. So a lot of people think that a visa is a document in itself. Actually, a visa is a stamp that you get inside of your passport. So once you obtain your passport, you will take your passport, get an envelope that is already self-addressed to you, send your passport to the embassy, and the embassy will put the visa inside, send it back to you. And now you have your visa, your passport ready to go. And then you also need your yellow fever vaccination. And so you can actually get this vaccination from a local clinic. A lot of times they may have to order it, but it is just one of the steps that you have to take in order to make it into Ghana. No African country will allow you in without the yellow fever vaccination.
And now they said the airport, they're able to give yellow fever. Those ones.
Yes, I've heard if you want to take that risk, I've heard that some people have actually gotten it on arrival, and it's a lot cheaper. So most times if you get it here in the States, it's about $300. If you get it on arrival, it's about $20. So you may want to wait and get it in the airport. Some people don't like to, put that risk out there, and they want to have all their documentation ahead of time.
And talking about people who want to move, of course, and live there, and the resident permits piece. Of course, Ghana requires that you have a residence permit to be able to live for a certain amount of time for those who are actually residing. Okay, so that's something that you want to look at with the immigration service. And what I know that is done is that with a residence permit, now for people who end up getting married to Ghanaians, like my wife, it's a whole different process altogether, if you like. Okay, you can start applying for certain things right from the onset. But however, if you're somebody who is just randomly showing up to the place, you're alone and all of that, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have to be doing some renewals when it comes to the residence permit. Like every 3 months, you may have to come and renew at the Ghana Immigration Service. And if you live there for some time, you're able to also get for 1 year. You can give it for 1 year. That at least within 1 year, you don't have to renew, or sometimes 6 months, you don't have to renew. So that's with the residence permit piece. Now, if you want to work in Ghana, and if you're not coming to Ghana with through an employer where you need like a work permit to be able to do that, where the employer is able to give you a letter. So right before you come, the embassy gives you a work permit before you come in. If that's not the case, and you come in and you now want to work in Ghana, you want to go to the immigration service and then go through their processes to get a work permit so you can be able to do that, to work in Ghana. Okay, now, if you want a driver's license, if you have an international driver's license, you can use it in Ghana. But why not get a Ghanaian one once you're living in Ghana? So you can go to DVLA, you can be able to do that. Again, you need help. You need help to go through all of these processes. I'll be mentioning that all the time. You need help to do that. It makes your life a lot easier. If you're starting a business, you need either a local partner or you want to do it yourself. The GIPC has some quotas based on where you're coming from. If you have Ghanaian descent and you've been to Ghana, you have a Ghanaian passport and all of that, it becomes a lot easier. But of course, if you're somebody who has, even though you're Ghanaian descent, but you have no direct ties in terms of Ghanaian passports and all of that, of course, you also have to go through the same process of having a quota and all of that. Okay, so you need to get a TIN number, what we call a TIN number. So that's part of the documentations when you want to get a business. For those who want to start businesses, you need a TIN number, and that will help you to be able to get all the necessary documentations when it comes to doing business. You need to register the business. If you have a local partner, there's a quota, $200,000. If you're solely owned, the business as a diaspora, either African American or from the Caribbean or wherever, you need $500,000. But when you get what do you call it, a Ghanaian partner, there's a trick to how you can go about it where your cost is not that huge. And that's one of the things that we actually teach people. So you want to consider that. If you want bank accounts, it's very key that you look at it. Now, I'll just use that opportunity to touch on the Ghana and American currency. I saw a quick comment in the thing that talked about that. I think that when it comes to the US currency, of course, the dollar is higher than the Ghana cedi, and then the pounds is, I think, higher as well. And that is higher than both the dollar and then, of course, the cedis. So that gives you some advantage there when it comes to Ghana and maybe doing business or doing any of these things that we're talking about. Because the currency is higher, it gives you leverage to be able to do a lot more. Okay, if you plan properly, it gives you the leverage to do that. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly. So if you need a bank account, that's something you can also initiate that process and show that at least I have permits to be here. So therefore I need a bank account, and you'll be able to do that. It's a fairly simple process. But once you get help, they can take you through all of those processes. And with the business requirements, if you get help, you can be taught all the business requirements. But if you want to start a business, of course, you know the thing that you need: registration, GIPC, approval, and you're quick to go.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that, or make it clear that, every business requirement is not the $250,000 dollars. There are some exceptions to that rule, and there are also some ways that you can go around it if it is one of the businesses that you need $250,000.
Exactly. So and there's some business as well that you don't need any of that at all. Like for example, manufacturing. If you're into manufacturing and you're coming from the outside, you don't need any quota at all. JIPC gives you a pass to be able to do that. And even imports as well and exports, you have a pass to be able to do that without having to bring in that quota. So that also is something you need to understand when it comes to the business piece, if you want to do business while you're in Ghana. And then, of course, one of the document paperwork that is involved, and it has to do with health insurance. A lot of people from the outside who are used to, some of us who grew up in Ghana, we're hardened. We're not really concerned about health insurance. We were sick, we go to the hospital, they treat us. But those from outside, they like to be secured. They like to be insured. So health insurance is something that a lot of people have concerns in. That's something that you work out during the paperwork period. If you're doing your search and having help, you can work out the health insurance. There are a lot of insurance companies all around Ghana that can help you be able to get a good health insurance whilst you're living in Ghana. Now, the next angle that I would like to touch on has to do with the job search, business and investment opportunities in Ghana. We'd like to touch on that. So you want to touch on the job piece, the job search.
I mean, I think that definitely the job search is about who you know, and it's about definitely thinking about, okay, do I have a skill set that can be utilized where maybe I might work in healthcare, where it may be more cumbersome for you to go and start your own business doing that. So you may want to translate a skill that you already have. You're a nurse, or you're a doctor, or you're an attorney or something like that. You may want to transfer your skill, but oftentimes we personally recommend that people look into entrepreneurship. Like Nee said earlier, there's millions of people who currently don't have jobs. And so we, from the outside coming in from the diaspora, we don't always want to be the people who are coming in and taking jobs from people who are looking. We want to be people who innovate and who create jobs for other people. So if you have a skill set that you use in the US or, wherever you are abroad, you can take that skill set, bring it to Ghana and help and contribute to Africa's development, and think about, what you can contribute and bring.
Now, when it comes to moving to Ghana, seriously, we never advise anybody to come looking for jobs, like she said. That's a no-no for us. But however, if you intend to do that, there are a lot of platforms that you can actually research and be able to see where you can get a job. And the advice I can give you is to think about getting a job before you make the move. Yeah. It's very key. Get a job before you move. Because when you move, unless you have a lot of money to sustain you for a long time before you get a job. But it's good if you can secure something before you actually make the move. And like she said, Ghana is all about who you know, networking. Okay? I know this person, they can recommend me to that person, they can talk to that person. That's just the way it is. It's one of the culture in Africa especially. It's about you talking to people. You can't just go on the internet and Google sometimes and you can easily get their jobs online, but it's not that easy. So you want to talk to people, and then somebody will recommend you that, hey, this guy is good, this lady is good, they'll fit this role, then you can get that role. Now, another thing I touch on when it comes to the job search piece is that there are a lot of expats, organizations like the UNDP and several others, like the UK, DFID and all of that you can actually reach out to and see the opportunities. Because if you're coming from the UK, you want a job that at least pays you a way that you think you'll be comfortable in terms of comparing it to the Ghana city and how much you're paid in the UK. Same applies to the US. So you want to look at those jobs, but we never advise anybody with that. So just so you know, if you do that, that's fair enough. Now, the next piece is business resources. Okay, there are a lot of platforms if you're intending to move and do business. There are a lot of platforms that gives you a lot of information about like business information about Ghana, about the country that you want to take a look at. Those from the US, you can look at the US Chamber of Commerce. Now they have a lot of information about even opportunities in the country, that you can look at, business strategies and all of that. You can find that in the US Chamber of Commerce. And also the UK people, you can look at UK Chamber of Commerce. You can get a lot of information if you're somebody who at least wants some business resources in that respect, even including jobs. You can find some information on those channels. And then the Ghana International Chamber of Commerce, you can also find a lot of information when it comes to jobs and, in fact, business opportunities and strategies from the continent. So just so you know that. Now we'll go ahead to look at opportunities, investment opportunities, or opportunities as a whole. Now this is something that we are very passionate about. Okay, and again, we do what we tell people, we teach people. The reason we're passionate about businesses and we talk about it with so much confidence is that we're executing ourselves. We do things ourselves. Okay, so we advise people that if you're coming to the continent from the outside, it is very possible if you plan properly. Even if it takes you 5 years, I'm telling you, if there's no gun to your head to move, if you plan properly and deal with the business piece, you will never regret making your move, and you will have a different lifestyle when you're in Ghana or when you're in Africa as a whole. I'm telling you, it's very key, it's very crucial. Just take your time and build. So let's look at some, when it comes to opportunities, okay, how you can go about that. And we'll touch on some few opportunities as well. Mm-hmm. The first thing I think you started addressing, and it has to do with the personal passion and expertise that people have.
Yeah, so it's very important that you take a look at, what you're passionate about. A lot of times we get questions about people who, or get questions from people where they're like, okay, what does Ghana need? How can I, what's a good business area that's going to make a lot of money? We don't always suggest that you look at what's going to make the most money or, what do you think is the biggest need? It's really personal. You want to look at what you're passionate about, what your skill set can bring, what may tie into what you feel. And I'm sure that whatever your area of expertise is or whatever you're passionate about, there is a need there. And so we want to advise people first to take a look at what they're passionate about before they start venturing into other business areas, because there's just so many.
And in Ghana, there are some key areas that I think that people can always look into when it comes to opportunities in Ghana. I tell people there are a lot of opportunities everywhere. As long as problems remain, there will always be opportunities. You just have to fish out and see what problems you can solve. Now, the first piece that I want to touch on has to do with agriculture. It's a field that a lot of people, attend away when we talk about it. But I've made up my mind that I always talk about it because we're involved with that ourselves. Because, as long as people 24/7 are going to be eating, if people don't stop eating, agriculture is always a very key opportunity that people can look at when it comes to business. And that can help even sustain yourself if you set it in motion. And agriculture, of course, I include things like animals rearing in the mix of that. So in agriculture, you can look at some areas in that. Production. You just want to be involved. The farmers are there. They are ready to do the work. Okay, nobody's pressuring them to do it. They want to do it. All you have to do is to make an investment in it. Because always people are buying some of these commodities. People are buying it continuously, exporting and importing these things. So you want to focus on production and say, look, let's grow corn. Let's grow watermelon. Let's grow pineapple. Let's grow this. And once we harvest, I have my money back. We have profit. So you want to look into the production piece. That's very key. You can put your money in there. In 1 year, you're having your returns and you're quick to go. You can sustain yourself year after year in Ghana while you build your big dream. Manufacturing. In fact, GIPC doesn't require any requirements to be able to go into manufacturing. So you can think about what can I actually take and then convert. I also call it processing. What can I take and convert into something? I take the tomatoes and I turn it into like tomato paste. Okay, what kind of things can I do this type of processing? And it's still in that great field. You don't have to go to the field. Just find 1 or 2 machines that you can do some type of value addition to these products that you're producing and take it to the market. That's a good way you can look at the agriculture sector when you want to make an investment there. And the packaging piece. If you live in America, you go to the stores, Walmart, Publix, and all of these other places, you see all these things that they've nicely packaged, the tomatoes, the carrots, the onions, and all of that. We have the same thing in Ghana. All these vegetables are in Ghana, but they don't last long. Why? Because there's no proper packaging. That's a huge business for you. And it's what I need people to understand is that it's a big space that everybody can get involved with when it comes to Africa. So don't think, oh, somebody's going to do it, so I'm not going to do it. No, there's so many. All of us can do it. You see, and we black people are not doing it, and other people who are not black are actually doing that. So why are we not executing? So think about that. The packaging piece in agric, you can also do that. And I'm telling you, do so well. You can do poultry farming, pig farming, anything that you want to do in the agric field. It can generate a lot of cash flow. The idea is cash flow. So whilst you're living in Ghana, you're able to, survive and thrive at the same time while you build whatever passion and whatever it is that you have that you're building. The next thing that I'll touch on is import and export with opportunities piece. Import and export. You don't need too much to be able to go into that. Here's what I tell people. If you live in the UK or in the US, find people who need things that are produced from Ghana. When you go to Ghana Export and Promotion Authority, you can tell them that you can find out from them who are the people, who are the buyers who are looking for things from Ghana in terms of the AYZ, or who are the people in Ghana who supplies AYZ to people on the outside. All you need to do is to find people to match, just like real estate. Find the buyer, match them to the seller, and you're in business. It's very simple. I know a gentleman and several other people who are actually doing that so well. All they're doing is finding buyers, connecting them to the sellers. And that's their business. They're doing that at the same time, building whatever it is that they're building in IT or in other fields. So that's something you want to look at when it comes to exports and export. And the next thing is tourism. You want to touch on some of the key things about tourism.
Yes. So tourism, of course, as we know, is a huge way for the country to make money, but it's also a way that an area that you can get involved with, because there's so many different things that spans from it. So you have transportation, with so many people looking to come back and looking to experience Ghana from a travel perspective. All of these people need transportation. So you may want to come up with, your own transportation service, or you may want to provide busing services, or, something in that line of thinking underneath transportation. You also need hospitality. All of the people, where will they stay? So you can think of hotels, boutique hotels. I'm trying to think of some of the other
and you can look at guest houses.
Airbnbs. You may decide that you want to purchase an Airbnb and rent it out to people who are coming from abroad, because they'll be looking on that particular platform. And when we say looking at Airbnb as a mode of income, we mean being able to charge in dollars. People are charging in dollars. As a matter of fact, when I went to Ghana and I stayed for 3 months, I actually stayed in an Airbnb the first time. And that was somebody who was in New York, and they were having someone run their Airbnb in Ghana. So it's definitely possible. You can definitely do it.
Food just touch on that.
Also, in relation to tourism. Yeah. So in relation to that, you might want to think about, okay, so all of these people are going to be coming for tourism. Where will they be stopping to eat? They definitely are going to want different food options, different food choices. So, and we know people are not going to stop eating. So, you can come up with a restaurant concept or a beverage concept that focuses on the tourism, or extends from the tourism sector. And, we also like to think about the fact that people will be traveling long distances. A lot of tourist attractions in Ghana are far apart. And so you want to think about, okay, well, if it's 2.5 hours for me to get to Cape Coast, is there a restaurant or a rest stop or a food place that somebody may want to stop and grab a bite to eat on the way there? So this is a business idea that somebody can come up with just based off of the tourism industry and all of the different people that will be coming to Ghana. They're going to be looking for food places and resources that fit what they're looking for.
All right, so let me make your life a lot easier for you. Now, this is all about cash flow and being able to sustain yourself and thrive whilst you're in Ghana. For me, it's more about cash flow. What can I do that can bring money so I don't have to struggle? I don't have to stay there for 6 months and want to come back. Now, maybe the things we're talking about are looking very cumbersome. Real estate, you're thinking about building something huge. Here's what I tell people. Now, if you follow the principle that we're showing you in terms of building your own place, you can build 2 bedrooms and then you're going to rent one while you live in one. And as you do that, you'll constantly have somebody who's going to be feeding you throughout your stay until you have everything figured out. And I'm telling you, there are also a lot of good places you can actually buy properties that may not be extravagantly expensive. You can live at one side, rent one side. Whilst you're doing that, you've created cash flow. A lot of people are traveling. Don't forget that. You can use that one side as Airbnb and you'll be making money. You don't have to think about start building some huge property where I need so much money to do that. Now, another thing when we talk about transportation, maybe you're thinking about something very cumbersome. Let me make it easy for you. Uber is everywhere in Ghana today. Ghana runs on taxis and all of that. Now, one of the things that you can think about, you don't have to do it yourself, is to get just one car. Make an investment in just one car. Get that car to be working for you. If that car is making sales for you, you have your feed-in fee every single time you're in Ghana. And in fact, you can actually get money to pay rent just by that your one car that is working for you whilst you're in Ghana, as you're building your big dream or building other bigger things. Because of course, once you move into Ghana, you don't just achieve everything at once. It takes time as you're building. But you want to have something that can keep you going as you build all of these big things. So these are little things that the average person like myself, who's not from a very wealthy home, that may not have so much money to start with something big like a bus for a tourist, to run a tourist bus necessarily. I can buy one car, I can buy 2 taxis. In fact, I can ship, if I have 2 cars in the UK or in America, I can ship it down, let them use that car for Uber. When I'm going somewhere, I get that same car and I use it. But if I'm not going anywhere, they use it for Uber, they bring me sales every single month. And there you go. And you can do that in several other avenues. There are a lot of opportunities when it comes to Africa. There are a lot of problems to be solved. When you go, open your eyes. That's the key. And you can see a lot of things to be able to do. Solve,
and
be able
get
to
help.
make money. Get help. Get help. We'll keep saying it. Get help. Get help. Get help. Now, we'll touch on another thing called navigating through Ghana's socio-economic space. Now, it's a very, very simple. I mean, we're just talking about, more like day-to-day living. Going through Ghana and some of the key things that you think is very practical for people to know and appreciate when it comes to living in Ghana and all of that. Okay, making your way through. One of the first things that I like to talk about has to do with adapting quickly. I call it adapting quickly because Africa is a place that is full of surprises. I can tell you today something is like this, but tomorrow it changes under your eyes. So you want to be very adaptive. If you're somebody who is very stagnant and rigid, you don't like to make changes, it becomes very difficult and frustrating for you. You have to be very adaptive when it comes to living in Ghana. Very adaptive. And that's how you can be able to navigate through this setup in Ghana. And I bet you in most of the African countries, I've been to a few, you need to be able to easily adapt. When change happens, you quickly change. When things shift, you quickly shift. If things don't go the way you expect, you quickly have to adapt and then make progress. And that can help you navigate through this living in Ghana process. The second piece has to do with building relationships. I think you touched on it, but touch on it again. I think it's a master key that people must understand when it comes to Ghana.
It's so crucial. It's so crucial. It is, the culture is about who you know. These will be the people that, help you out when you're in need. These will be the people that you call on because there's just certain things that are not able to be done without knowing somebody. You may need to know somebody in order to get your business registered. If you wanted to get it registered faster, you may need to know somebody. There's just these unsaid rules about, establishing yourself in culture and society that, most people don't know if they're coming from the outside, and that, will be very different and be very new to them. And so establishing your relationships is key. You don't want to just go and, feel like I can do everything on my own. I know more than people here. I've got my plan together. I did all of that. I don't need anybody, because that will be the fastest way for you to fall flat on your face and for you not to have any help for when you've fallen and now you need to get back up. So it is key. And I would say be nice to everybody. Like, that's just something it seems so simple, but it's so important. Anybody that you meet, you never know who they know. You never know how they can be helpful to you. So never look down on anybody that you meet, and just be open. Every relationship can be useful for you in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure just like several other places where, like the least person that you expect that could be your biggest savior or helper actually ends up being your biggest helper. You look at the security guard and disregard them. They're very key. And that's a relationship building. There's no discrimination. Because the very person you're ignoring, at the end of the day, is the closest person to the manager. The manager trusts them, although they are sitting at the gates. He trusts them than anybody else. He trusts the cleaner than anybody else. So you want to be very careful. Once you arrive at the airport in Ghana, making your way, people will provoke and annoy you, but make sure you personally, knowing what you're about and your agenda, you don't go about creating fights and all of the unnecessary squabbles that affects this relationship building process. Because I'm telling you, Ghana is about building relationship. Like you can't overemphasize that.
I just wanted to hit another key point. And a lot of times when we're coming from the outside, even as African Americans, we may think, okay, I'm moving back to the motherland, like, you know, this is my birthright, I'm entitled, and all of those things. It is our birthright to move back. We are descendants of Africa. We are Africans. But when we come back, we must come back with an attitude of that we're willing to learn, that we're willing to be open, that things will be different, that things won't be the same as they were, as we knew them before. And that's what I think is key. In order for you to be able to build those relationships and to have harmony, we must be open and willing to adapt, like me said, to the new culture that we're coming into. We can't come and force Western culture upon Ghanaians or upon Africa, because then there will be this disharmony. We have to be open to learning about how culture is there. And they, of course, also have to be open to learn about our story and what we've gone through being in the Western world.
Now, the next thing that I'll talk about in terms of navigating through Ghana's socioeconomic space is very key. Has to do with solving real problems. Now, the reason this is a rare subject is looking out of the way, solving real problems. I'm telling you, one of the things that makes people frustrated, even people who live in Ghana, Ghanaians living in Ghana, people don't open their eyes to figure out what problems they can solve. And that creates a separation between those who actually thrive and those who don't. Now, if you're going to be able to navigate through this system, to be able to be relevant in whatever it is that you're doing, you have to constantly figure out what problems am I solving? What is going on? What area can I take and tackle and get other people behind me to move? That's one thing I realized the hard way. I'm telling you, if you don't open your eyes whilst you're in Ghana to figure out what real problems I can solve, you always be left in little silos. I'm telling you, because you advancing will be very difficult because you're solving nothing. And I'm sure it's just like any other place, but Africa especially, once we have so many problems and sometimes people can be frustrated and so they're not opening their eyes, you want to make sure that you're opening your eyes to everything around you. What can I solve to keep climbing the ladder in that respect? So that's one way I think people can be able to navigate through this process a lot. Opening your eyes and thinking about things you can constantly be touching on constantly as you're moving along.
And I would just like to add, you may come, and of course, Ghana, we'd like to say that Ghana is a developing country and point out that it's a developing country. And the reason that, there's so many business opportunities and so much, opportunity for us to come back, it is the way that it is because it is developing. And so when we come and we see something that is undeveloped, it may frustrate us. But I always say, as somebody coming, if that frustrates you so much, that is a problem. Something that is undeveloped, it may frustrate us. We have to start over. I think
the 1 hour ended.
Mm-hmm. So go back. Well, she has to go live first.
Okay, so we touch on these things. I didn't know it kept. Yes.
So it's still recording over here.
Ooh, okay, let's go. Oh, that's a lot of people. All right, we're live on a program actually that we're having. So that's why we're not really looking at the comments. But hey, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate you. Hey, Precious, long time. Good to have you here. Kwame Olatunji. All right, I think we're going back. Like we'll address all your concerns once we're. Let me quickly.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry guys. I think it has like a 1 hour limit.
What was I? Please help me with my train of thought.
No, you're talking about what do you call it? I think the relationship piece.
No. I know what I was saying. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, you're still dealing with, So we'll give it some time. Okay. All right, we're back. Yeah.
I think it's like a 1 hour limit, isn't it?
Yes.
I figured. I figured.
But that's quite all right. We can just jump right back in. We're almost
the momentum. We're closing actually. We're closing. So let's get the fire in.
Yes.
So you want to land your
I want to quickly land. So what I was saying was, when we come back and we see something that looks undeveloped, or we see something that bothers us, if it bothers you so much, don't turn your nose up to that particular problem. That problem is really an opportunity for you to solve and for you to help Ghana's development, and for you as well. It's a business opportunity for you, something that could change your generation, something that could change the whole of Africa. So look at it that way, and just be open. Don't look at it as
I've heard of a lot of people, like especially people of African descent directly. And me being in Ghana and having a lot of them come back at the time, you hear them talking about, oh, so this thing is still like that. and the question is, what can they do about it? What are they doing about it? Are they coming together with other people to think of how they can solve that problem? So if we're going through Africa, if you want to thrive, you need to think of how you can solve problems.
Look at what Akon is doing. Look at what he's doing in Senegal, and how he has come up with, lighting for all of these people in Senegal. That was an issue, a development issue that he has now taken a look at and said, hey, this is also a business opportunity and an opportunity for me to also change Africa. So be innovative when you're going back, and think of it that way.
All right, so the next thing we'll look at, and that will be our last thing we'll touch on, has to do with things to consider when interacting with locals. How does one integrate appropriately? That's the
Ghanaian society.
That's a piece that we'll touch on. How interaction with locals and all of that. And all of this that we're dealing with, of course, has to do with more of pre-move. And when you move, these are some of the things that you encounter. Now, one of the first things that I'd like to touch on has to do with community. Okay, community. Now, Ghana again is more of a societal type of lifestyle. Kind of, we live in, like everybody's family member, kind of, for the most part. So that's something that if you're coming into Ghana to live in Ghana, you want to start thinking about what communities can I be part of coming from the diaspora, because one of the things that makes a lot of people frustrated is because they feel like they're alone.
Or isolated.
Okay, they feel isolated. So that's the first thing you want to check. That what are the communities that are available for me to be part of? That I can have people who are like-minded. When you're coming from America, there are communities like African American Association that you can be a part of. So you have to begin to make the search and figure out which community can I be a part of, so I don't feel alone, I don't feel left out. And when you do that, what that is going to do for you firsthand is going to help you to be able to understand some of the things that they have learned in being there. Okay, and it ties back into some of the things that are appropriate to do. Some of the things that Ghanaians don't actually like. You get to learn these things from the community that you've now become a part of. So don't move to Ghana and be in a silo. No, look for communities that you can actually be a part of. Now, the second thing that we'll touch on that can help you integrate with locals, before I deal with some sentiments that a lot of people have, has to do with the local language. Maybe some people take it for granted. Some people debate about it. But you see, when you approach a market woman, in the streets, and you're able to tell them at a sign, something very basic, put in effort to be able to learn that and say at a sign, that puts a certain type of joy that makes them welcome you differently. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. So I tell people, if you want to go into Ghana, and that's one of the first things my wife did, is to take a tree class. Until today, she's still taking 3 classes. At least it'll be better. So it depends on your interest. But at least the widely spoken local language, learn a few things. It doesn't hurt. One of the things we do on our trips, we run trips to Ghana as well. One of the things we do is we have a teacher that has pre-done some basic tree lessons that we give our people for negotiations and all of that. So you want to be able to have some basics, especially for you who want to move and live. Don't learn everything in the tree language to be an expert. No, I know how to say bonjour. I don't have to learn everything in French. When I meet somebody in Miami, they speak a lot of Spanish. So what I did was I learned a few Spanish. My wife got me an app for Spanish. She can do a little Spanish. So I began to learn few words in Spanish. That when I meet the people in Miami who speak Spanish, I just say one word. And when I say one word, they come on, they get excited and they welcome me differently. Although I'm not Spanish, they know I'm not Spanish. So that is very key if you want to be able to integrate into Ghana society very well and easy. You know, you want to be able to learn a few things. It doesn't matter the group in which you find yourself. If you find yourself amongst elites who speak only English, that's also fine. But once you're living in Ghana, you find yourself in certain places. It doesn't hurt to have a few local language lessons. You want to say a word in Chi that you remember. Say something in Chi that you've learned.
It's the same.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Say another one. I'm challenging you. Say another one. Come on. Give me another one. Mache. You know what mache means? It means good afternoon. Good afternoon. No, it means good morning. Sorry. Maha means good afternoon. It means good morning. So few things that you can pick up here and there. You can even buy books. You don't have to get a teacher. Buy a few cheap books that teaches you. Good morning is mache. Just to have that feel. When you meet somebody, even you, it brings excitement to you. You know, when you meet somebody somewhere, you're able to just say one word. If you go to the market, anywhere, it's beautiful. It helps you integrate, you know, easily and nicely. So that's something you want to look at. And also basic cultural knowledge. Basic cultural knowledge. Some people get up, they said, I want to move to Ghana. And they have never taken the time to do any research to find out anything about Ghanaian culture. You know, and how it has evolved with time.
And the do's and don'ts of Ghanaian culture. Exactly. There are a lot of do's and don'ts that you wouldn't know from the internet. So,
you know, like for example, in Ghana, we don't joke with our left hand. Our left hand is very something else. You don't greet people with left hand. You don't use left hand to wave people and all of that. It's like a taboo. So these are very few cultural knowledges that you can actually learn. You don't have to learn everything about the culture. Learn few things about the culture, basics. Basic. It starts from there. The more you live there, then you can begin to pick up a lot more. It doesn't make you frustrated easily, you know, because there will be a lot more harmony between you and the people that live there because you've picked up a few things that you're practicing. You know the culture. You know that when you get to a place, you don't have to greet from the left. You have to greet from the right. You know, that type of thing. When you're sitting in your house and somebody comes to your place, you know that, you know, you have to welcome them. You have to give them water. So these are basic things that you learn. It helps with you being able to integrate properly. There are a lot more things that you need to know, but what we are saying is it's a key piece to be able to integrate. Find out some of the cultural things that you can learn about Ghana, about Senegal, Gambia, wherever it is that you're going, and it will do you a lot of good to integrate. Now, I'll touch on some few sentiments living as a Ghanaian and having interactions with people that are coming from the outside. I've also got to experience it in being someone coming from the outside, from America to Ghana, and I've experienced it being in Ghana and other people coming to me. Now, one of the first things has to do with the preconceived notions that people in Ghana have. And I've been a part in that. Where once we are in Ghana, of course, we've never been anywhere, we've never traveled. We have a lot of preconceived notions about somebody who's coming. We automatically think you're coming to prove tough. You're coming to prove that. You're coming to prove that. So we're already on guard. So that is something that a lot of people must be aware of, that most people you'll be encountering have preconceived notions. So you either prove them right or prove them wrong. So, but when you are aware of that, it helps you to be very careful how you relate to people until they get to know you. Once they get to know you and your personality, everything is relaxed and moving. But at a go, they always have in mind that you will try to feel superior. You try to act superior. So they are very much on guard. The least thing they take you on. So you have to be vigilant and know that this is how the people think. You can't blame them for that. It's based on experience. When I was growing up, I had some family members who may have traveled and came back. And when they came back, sometimes they behave differently. So with those notions, I think everybody who comes back from outside behave like that. And we apply those rules to them. So you have to know how to navigate. So when I go back to Ghana, I know how to deal with my people. I don't act like I'm different, you know. And that's some of the few tricks that you can actually learn when it comes to that, because Ghanaians are very sensitive. Now, the second piece that I want to talk about has to do with, you know, Ghanaians having a different type of lifestyle, a laid-back lifestyle. So when you come and you're trying to compare how they're doing their things to how you know things to be done wherever you're coming from, that becomes very offensive to most Ghanaians. And in fact, when I was living in Ghana and growing up in Ghana, it was very offensive when I have people coming from the outside. And they try to tell me that the way I'm doing things are just crazy and this is how it's supposed to be done. You have to figure out how you can adapt, because I'm telling you, you are coming in to the majority. You want to figure out how you can live peacefully. So you don't think nobody understands me. Nobody kind of agrees with me. So you get frustrated and you leave. Meanwhile, there are so many beautiful people out there you can actually connect with, if only they can get to know you. But you're failing to learn how to adapt. because you want to compare everything they do to everything you've ever learned your entire life in America or in the UK. That is a disaster. On Germany, that's a disaster. You don't want that. So Ghanaians don't like that. And being a Ghanaian and living in Ghana, having people come to me, I know we don't like that. So don't even try that. Don't even try that. The second piece has to do with pride. Pride. I think you touched on that. Talk a little bit about that. Pride. People coming out and feeling so entitled, like you have to be saved. That type of attitude.
I think it's about coming with a humble attitude.
Yep.
About coming and saying, like, these are things, especially when it relates to when we talk about African American history and the transatlantic slave trade. Like, all of those different things have happened to us as Black people. But when we're coming back, we have to understand that we can't just go in with an entitlist attitude. And we also have to come back and understand that there are a lot of people living in Ghana who may not have heard or may not have learned about the slave trade and know it and know the history just the way that we know it. And while that is an issue that we have to dig deeper into, it's still something that is still a fact. And so when we come and, we feel that, they should get it, it's an opportunity for us to sit down, have dialogue, and understand each other. When I went to Ghana the first time, and I spent a long time working and living in Ghana, I had a lot of conversations with my coworkers about police brutality in America. And a lot of times they were shocked to know that these were not one-off things that were happening, or that police brutality was this huge and this big. And so we had these interesting and deep discussions, but it was that coming together of us deciding that we're going to come together and learn from each other that allowed for us to have a great relationship while I was there. And they were the best of friends, teaching me the language, all of that. But it's because of how I approached it.
And let me give you one last thing that Ghanaians really dislike and they hate. Whenever you try to act like you deserve a preferential treatment, that I know my rights attitude, it will go against you hugely and make your life very uncomfortable in Ghana. If you want to always prove a point that, I know my rights, you have to treat me in a certain type of way. I'm telling you, Ghanaians don't like that, especially if you find yourself in spaces where you're not in charge, for the most part, and you want to act like because you're coming from the UK, or you're coming from America, you have to get a certain preferential treatment. When Ghanaians have any sense of that, that's a big problem for you. It doesn't help you to be able to integrate, especially when it comes to the business space. It affects you a lot when you try to act in a way that suggests that you think they should treat you specially because, of course, you're coming from the UK, coming from Germany or wherever. Ghanaians just like that. So if you want to be able to integrate,
money or whatever,
exactly,
whatever it may be.
If you want to integrate properly, that's something that you don't have to do. It's a no-no. Now, before we take your questions, let me give you. I think we answer the question, we'll send them the answers. I think that's what I got it. Yes. But let me give you the golden rules of Ghana. Golden rules of Ghana. This is something I found out, and I found it to be true, and I did a little tweak to it. But the golden rules of living in Ghana. Pay attention carefully. It says 1, everything is possible. We're closing. Everything is possible. If you're planning to move or intending to move, you visited before or whatever, you have to understand that when it comes to Ghana, everything is possible. Whatever you want to do, you want to accomplish, it is very possible. People have done it before and people are still doing it, and therefore you can also do it. It's possible. The second golden rule is that nothing is easy. You have to understand. You have to go through processes. Sometimes the loopholes can be very frustrating and difficult, but you have to understand that nothing is easy when it comes to Ghana and any other place on the continent. So you have to be patient and go through the processes. That's a second golden rule in living or doing any business in Ghana. Nothing is easy. The third thing has to do with Western logic does not apply. Any logic that you have in the Western world about how things should be, how fast things should move, the fact that when I apply for this, I should get it tomorrow, it does not work. It makes you only frustrated. So one of the key rules is that Western rules or logic does not apply. You need to calm down and look at the Ghanaian way and see how you can navigate and get the best out of it. It's very key if you want to survive and thrive in Ghana. Now, the fourth thing has to do with it becomes a fun adventure if there's no deadline. A lot of first, in coming from the Western world, we're always living a lifestyle where there's always some deadline. If this time ends, this is going to happen. If that time ends, that is going to happen. Ghana doesn't function like that. So if you want to enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the flow, don't entangle yourself with too much deadlines that I need to meet up this, I need to meet up that. It's good that you discipline yourself to do that. But when other people are involved, don't frustrate yourself with those type of deadlines, because they call off meetings at the last minute. They do all of that. So you don't want to kill yourself that because there's a deadline at all costs it has to be. No. If you want to enjoy and make it a fun adventure in your process of living in Ghana, I'm telling you, don't make deadlines some kind of necessity or cast in stone. It will affect you. The faith thing has to do with you must persist. You must persist. Things will come your way eventually. You have to persist. A lot of people start and they say, oh, nobody understands me. And they give up and they go back to the US. They go back to the UK. They come back to Denmark. They come back to Germany. They give up. They're unable to persist. They start one business. Somebody disappoints them. They try buying land, not through a certain channel. Somebody disappoints them. And they feel like everywhere in Ghana getting land is bad. And they give up. No, you have to persist. When it comes to Ghana, if you want to be able to live and survive and stay longer and enjoy your stay, you have to be able to persist. If something doesn't go this way, find another way. But at the end of the day, you have to persist and be able to make it, because it's possible. Now, the sixth thing, golden rule that I like to talk about is you have to be patient. Patience is the essence of success in living in Ghana. Patience is key. If you're coming from a place where you have things being done at a certain time, it doesn't work like that in Ghana. You have to be patient and allow things to have its course. You get a chance to live every day. So take note. It's very key. Patience is essence to success in Ghana. Now, the seventh rule is quite silly. It says, when you are optimistic, think about rule 2. Rule 2 was nothing is easy. When you're optimistic, like as for you, you're so confident, like this has to work. This has to work. He said, think about rule 2, that nothing is easy, so you don't get overly ambitious and be frustrated. He said that the last one talks about when you are discouraged. He said, think about rule 1, that everything is possible when it comes to Ghana. Everything is possible. And I'm telling you, with these golden rules and the things that we've shared, whether you're planning your move before or you're in the process of doing it, I'm telling you, you're going to have a very successful move. And you're not going to have any of the worries that a lot of people have. But at the end of the day, you have to do what? Get help. Yeah, you have to get help. You have to get help. So thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you. I don't know how we'll be going about the questions. I think we're done here. Questions from the audience. What was that?
I would like to ask some of the questions some people have been asking.
Okay, perfect.
Well, the things that I've made a few notes. The first question was, I don't know if that person is still here, but it's good if we still answer it, especially when I send the emails. Can you get dual citizenship in Ghana? I think that's yes, because I know people that.
Yes, Ghana gives dual citizenship. Once you go through the process of getting Ghanaian citizenship and you get it, it depends on the country you are coming from. Ghana gives it. But if you're coming from a country that does not accept dual citizenship, you need to work that out over there. But in Ghana, if your country accepts it, Ghana definitely accepts dual citizenship. Yes.
Okay. Then another person asked, tell us what is the major difference between America and Ghana?
The major difference between America and Ghana.
Video on that.
Trust me, there are a lot of different things. I don't know what I'll say is a major. So the major difference is how things look. The outlook. Okay, Ghana has a lot more cultural, traditional look than America does. I think that's a major difference. The rest has to do with individual things like police brutality. A policeman doesn't stop you in Ghana and attempts to shoot you. He doesn't even think about his gun. When he stops you, he's trying to take something little from you and let you move on. But here in America, when a policeman stops you, his hands is on his gun because you're a black man. That's a major difference in America. The police is worried about how he's going to take your life away rather than what he could get from you. The policeman in Africa or in Ghana thinking about what he could get from you in terms of little money so you can like a fine and get away rather than thinking about taking your life. So that's one major difference that I think is there. And Ghana is very peaceful, for sure. Ghana is very peaceful. Laid back. We talked about that. It's very laid back. Nobody's in a rush necessarily. So it's very peaceful. You enjoy every day as it comes. As compared to living in America where everybody's in a rush. You need to make up to a job. Otherwise, the next time you're on the street, everything is kind of quick, fast food. Everything is fast. It's not like that in Africa. It's laid back. So that's, I think, some of the differences. There are thousands of them. In fact, we have a video on our YouTube if you check our YouTube channel, Certified Africa, we have a lot of videos where we've talked about things like that. The differences between Ghana and then we've even used our personal life, because I'm Ghanaian, she's African American and Caribbean. We've used our personal life to talk about some of the difference, even with the people. So yes.
Okay, somebody asked, where do you recommend to stay in Ghana when making the visits? I answered, but what do I know? But I would say Accra, but it all depends on what do you say?
Yes, if you're visiting, it depends on the type of lifestyle that you like. I've seen a lot of people who visit and they like to visit close to the slave castles. That's preferential. A lot of people want to live in Accra and be close to the airport. That's also possible. They want to have a lot of fun, party and all of that. I've seen a lot of people who come to Ghana with a mindset for business in agriculture. So they like to live in certain places that is close to rural communities where they can access the lands and all the big lands for farming. So it's preferential on what type of life you want to live when you visit Ghana and where you want to live. Okay. But again, it's up to you. But Accra is always the number one recommendation. If you're visiting for like 1 week or 2 weeks, usually you want to be in Accra. So yes.
Okay. Somebody asked if there is overt racism in Ghana, like in the USA. Well, I guess you answered that.
It's what?
Overt racism.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I guess, no.
Let's just a quick one. With that.
Yeah. Yes.
For people who don't know, when you go to a place like Ghana where everybody looks like you can imagine, if there's going to be ever racism, it's very minimal. So just so people know.
So how do people generally react to foreigners or Americans especially?
Oh, they're very curious. Once you open your mouth and you have the American accent, they're very curious. Some of them begin to smile and laugh and ask all kinds of questions. So it's usually loving. But it depends on the attitude you give them. But usually share your stories.
I would like to. So the first time that I came, I was like so excited to meet everybody. And I kept just getting all of these stares. And I was just like, they don't seem like interested in meeting me. But it's just culturally different. And when I spoke to you, I was like, well, why does it seem that way? He's like, just relax, speak to people, say hello. And sometimes it may just be the setting that you're in. You may speak to somebody and it may just be a setting where you are not the first person. You shouldn't be the first person to speak. And so, all of those things into consideration, once I relaxed and my energy was just chill, I found that a lot more people were open to interacting with me and talking to me. And so, don't be closed.
And, let me give you an example. In Ghana, the way we are raised up, we're raised up to be very, kind of laid back. People, we call it, I don't want to say timid, but, we're not raised up the type of people that want to ask questions, that want to make the first move. Majority of people in Africa and Ghana are raised up to hold back, allow others to make the first move. That's how kind of we're taught through the idea of respect. So a lot of Ghanaians, when they meet you for the first time, they want to be able to say something, but by their nature, naturally, they are not able to make that first move. But I bet you when you muster courage and say hello to them, I'm telling you, that's it. Like, they're going to engage in a very nice conversation with you and you get excited. But if you also think that because of how they're not able to say anything to you, they are rude and all of that, they don't like you, then you'll be making a big mistake.
Yeah.
In America, everybody you meet, young, old, they say, hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are you doing? In Africa, it's not like that. It's not like that. It's not like that. So you want to be able to understand the people. That not that people don't appreciate you, but they're unable to make the first move. So you have to be able to make the approach and then they take it from there.
Okay, then somebody asked if there is mandatory vaccines. I just know of the yellow fever one. Is that still mandatory?
Yes.
I think we addressed that.
The only mandatory vaccine you need. All the other ones are optional.
Okay. Then somebody asked what governmental style, but this democracy.
Yes.
Yes, democracy. Ghana is one of the peaceful places, democratic places you can find on the African continent, and that's why it's the gateway to Africa. We have a long-standing democracy.
Yes. Somebody asked, what about the educational system? Basically, like, how does it work there with the private schools? And where's the lady that asked that?
So Ghana has, the public sector education and the private sector education. Okay, for the public sector, right from the basic education, we have free education up until the secondary level. In America, that's what we call the high school. I don't know for the UK, but I guess it's the same, which is the high school for the UK and other European countries as well. So we have that. It is free when it comes to Ghana. Now, the tertiary part, the public education is not free. You have to make payments to be able to have that. And we have some very strong public tertiary education, like the universities.
University, yeah.
Universities. We have some very solid ones. If you have kids who want to go to university, they can have very good education. And these students, a lot of them compete with people from Harvard and Yale, and they beat them every single year in the examinations that they take. So yes, your children can have that. There are a lot of good private schools, both American curriculum schools, British curriculum schools, German, Swiss curriculum schools. All of those are in Ghana. So you can find very good Montessori schools that your children can attend whilst they're in Ghana, from America, from Europe, from wherever, the Caribbean. They can have very good education. So I think that's what I'll say about that. So I don't go into that. But when you get help, all of these things will be sorted out.
Okay, so and especially at primary school.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, she basically said it. What is it like, especially in primary school? Is it, do you know? So the public school system is absolutely for free, or do you still have to pay some sort of tuition? No,
it's free for tuition. You have to maybe get your uniform. In fact, they have school feeding programs where they actually give food. But of course, you can get your child your own food. But tuition is free for the public schools at the basic level. The primary level is free all the way to high school right now. If they change it, fine. But now it's free. So your children can get that. But of course, a lot of people like the private school because don't forget, anything free, the quality is a little bit questionable. So it's up to you what exactly you want for your child. But there are some good public schools as well that you can find based on location. If the public school is in a very rich neighborhood, of course, and you're living there, you can expect that your child gets away in there, that the quality of education there will be higher than a school in some village somewhere, and it's also free. So it differs. But there's always private primary schools that your children can attend if you have the resources.
Okay, somebody else asked, does the government allow people to be successful, unlike in the US? I mean, I'm not too aware of that. If they stop people to be successful in the US.
The government.
When you get to certain kind of success, maybe some governments are like, no, actually, we don't want you to be successful. How does that work in Ghana?
In fact, the government really has no business in hindering your success. I can tell you for a fact. Because when you think about the idea of even taxes and how it works in Ghana, and we're getting better at it. It's not like how it is in US. In America, the tax system eats up your entire money. I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't pay taxes. People should pay taxes, but the rules attached to them are so strict that, it frustrates people a lot. And because some takes a lot of your money even before you get it. It's not like that in Ghana, and that's the beauty. You're able to create wealth. There are a lot of people I've seen who have moved from Ghana, and even people who live in Ghana that are 10 times more successful. That's a reality than people who actually come here. If you have the right strategies, don't make a mistake. People in Africa are making so much money in Africa if you have the right strategies. A lot of us in Africa, the reason sometimes we want to move and travel and all of that is because we don't see what's around us. But once we move and we begin to see, we're like, oh, everything was actually here. So why did I even make this move? And you begin to question yourself. So I can tell you for a fact, African governments doesn't frustrate you. When you have a house, at least the tax that you pay on that house is very good. Here in America, the taxes you pay on a house, if you manage to own one, you're in trouble. By the time you grow old, the kind of money you spent on that house, Lord Jesus, so it's not like that in Africa. And a lot of African Americans who live in Ghana will testify to that. There are a lot of videos to show that, look, this is how other people's experience when it comes to people who have lived there for 40 years from the outside. I've not lived there for 40 years from the outside. She hasn't yet. So you want to look at people who have done that. And it's all over the internet who have done that. It's very good.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think there are no more questions. Anybody else got any more questions? No? Doesn't seem like? Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank
so,
you.
I mean, people can just a quick one. People can reach us, of course, on Certified Africa gmail.com. If you have any personal thing you want to talk to us about, you can reach us at my email. You can just email us. We'll respond to you and have a conversation. I mean, it's a big space. There are a lot of people who can help you. You can also reach out to us, and we can also be able to help you. Okay, you can check our website, certifiedafrica.com. You can find a lot of different information that people want to travel and have the visit for the first time. If you go on our website, you can have. Go ahead.
Yeah. What about healthcare? Sorry, some people are asking questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so healthcare again. There are very good hospitals now in Ghana. There's a hospital called Naho, Clinic, and they have a lot of equipments that can take care of a lot. There are a lot of places where you can do very complex surgeries as well. Although there's still room for improvement, I can tell you, but at least they can be able to handle all the basic things. In fact, they can do brain surgery even in Ghana. So I think healthcare is fairly good. That should never be a deterrent. Okay, it should never be a deterrent for somebody. And there's health insurance. You can also look into it if you're interested in that. But the health system is not, because it's not widespread in terms of everywhere, you getting quality health. Location based on where you live is also very key to very critical, hospital facilities. Based on the pre-existing conditions that you have, you don't want to live far, so you consider all of that to live by major hospitals. There's some very good private clinics and some very good government hospitals as well. But of course, we lack space in some of the hospitals, the government hospitals. So yes, the healthcare is quite good over there. I only see the good. I'm telling you. There's few bad, but there's always, you can always overcome those ones and move on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will go over the whole conversation and edit it together tomorrow, and send out a few emails and a questionnaire for everybody to ask any questions that have not been answered, and we take it from there. And obviously, we will. I will send you the email before I send it out to make sure that all the information is accurate, and also direct people towards you if they have any more specific questions.
Sure, and just a quick one in relation to people who want to, of course, move and they are ready to move and within this time, of course, they can reach out. If you want to buy land, maybe you're not ready to move, but you want to buy land in Ghana. If somebody tells you it's not possible, tell them it's a lie. They should talk to Certified Africa. We're going to show you how you can be able to buy credible land, even very close to the capital. We're going to help with very credible sources. That's the key about land in Ghana. So you're not duped and disappointed and use that to judge the collective that, buying land in Ghana, they'll dupe you. No, they are very credible channels. If you talk to us, we'll show you how you can be able to buy credible land and start your business. You can reach out to us and we'll help you through that process. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, somebody's asking for the dress code policies. Like, is there any specific things you can and cannot wear?
No, I think you can wear everything. Ghana's culture has really evolved with time to the extent that you can wear anything. People wear, but of course you wouldn't see people. I don't think people do it anywhere, wearing certain indecent like bikinis in town. You don't see that in Ghana. You can wear it at a beach, but you don't see it. You don't see it in town. So yes, but aside that, you can dress freely, feel free, however flow you can go. You're quick to go. But if you're part of certain bodies, like in Ghana, if you're a lawyer, like my wife's an attorney. When she was working in Ghana as an attorney, she has to go to work in a certain outfit based on where she worked in the judicial system. So it's up to you and where you work and the kind of dress code that you have to wear. That's the only thing. Aside that, I think it's a free flow. You can wear what you want, what makes you happy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate you.
Yeah, maybe we can have as us two can have a meeting, us three can have a meeting moving on and talk about today and all the information we'll be sending out and for the next time. Definitely. We appreciate everybody that joined as well. Bless. For your energy.
I'm sorry?
Thank you so much for your time and your energy.
Yes,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye. Okay. All right. So let's.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
let's close up here. All right, our people. Say hey, love. What you guys are doing? Let me see. I'm putting it. So what you guys are doing? So what? What you guys? Is that love?
I
what
love
you
what
guys
you guys are doing. I'm taking notes from your old videos and working my way up. Thanks for
Okay, Paula.
information. Okay. Yeah.
Somebody said Aquaba. Yeah, Nigel, Aquaba. All right. So yes, we appreciate you all for joining or passing through Better Still. You can always check it out on YouTube. You know, you can always reach us out on Certified Africa if you're intending to move or intending to do business. You want to do it right. You want to talk to credible people that can help you. You can talk to us. We'll help you, you know, through the process. So thank you also so much for joining. We appreciate you.
Our email is down below. Also, our number, if you want to reach out, that's +1 727 222 1637. You can also visit us on www.certifiedafrica.com, and also follow us and subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah, we're building a family here and a movement.
Yes,
you are our move makers, so let's subscribe to the channel and let's keep making moves on the African continent. Stay blessed.